Welcome to the Panic Button. I'm Nina. So if you've ever heard of MoistCr1tical, Penguin Zero, Charlie, he's a YouTuber slash Twitch streamer who I've watched for quite some time. He's a very monotone speaking Andrew WK looking fella. And he's funny. But I just saw a video on Twitter of him debating Sneako. It's probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard Charlie say.
Do you believe that somebody can go through hormone therapy? Can they change their gender if they're a child?
I think that's totally fine as long as everyone is consenting, as you agree with.
Okay, so as long as everyone...
If your parents are okay with it and you are okay with it, I think that's totally a familial decision to make, yeah.
Okay.
Children can't consent to these kind of things. He's saying that the child can transition socially and medically if they have the parents' permission, if the parents are aware and they are consenting and they signed off on it. But what he doesn't know is that most parents are not informed. They usually only hear one side of the story, which is touted by mainstream media, probably their friends and so on. That transitioning is good. Would you rather have a dead daughter or an alive son? They'll emotionally manipulate them they'll themselves if you don't let them transition. But they're not given any sort of information when it comes to side effects, detransitioners, and so on. Because, well, there's a lot of factors, really. There's big pharma that wants to make money. It's putting these kids on a medicalized path forever. So that once they start these puberty blockers and so on, there's no going back. Now, they all say that puberty blockers are reversible, but they're not. Once you're starting to chemically alter a child's body and prevent them from going through puberty, there's no going back. The child can't say when they're 15, I'm going to go off puberty blockers and I'm going to go through my normal puberty. That's not how biology works. But this is what the mainstream media says, and they say it's a consensus and that the studies are out and everyone is on board with it. But if that were the case, then why are the countries that started this process backpedaling? They're going back on everything, on the puberty blockers, letting children transition medically, anything like that. And it's because the studies are out and the whistleblowers have come forward and a lot more to come. And what they've said is there isn't a consensus. This is actually gay conversion therapy. This is mutilating children, and it's not giving them a chance to go through puberty and grow out of it, because in majority of the cases, if you just leave the child alone, they can go by a different name, they can wear different clothes or whatever, but if you leave them alone and you don't give them puberty blockers and you don't cut off their boobs and stuff like that, majority of the time they're just going to grow up to be a regular adult. Most of the time, though, they end up becoming gay adults. So if you're saying that a child knows who they are when they're 3 or they're 10, you have to ask yourself, how do they know that? Because they don't know. First of all, their brain's not fully developed. That doesn't happen until 21 with girls, 25 with boys. A child is making a decision about their future adult self. Now, children don't think about sex. Children don't think about logically getting married and having babies and stuff like that. And if they do, there's a conversation that needs to be had there, because that's very concerning. But they're not thinking about that. They don't know what it's like to be an adult and make the decision or think about having children, because it's so far away from where they're at. Having a normal sex life, they'll never be able to have that. But they can't think about, oh, when I'm an adult, I want to have a normal sex life, because they're children. They shouldn't be thinking about that. And if they are, like I said, conversation needs to be had. But once these children go through puberty blockers and they get on the hormones, it's chemical castration. These are hormones, medications that are given to pedophiles in order to chemically castrate them. And you're giving this to children. And what it's doing is, not only is it chemically castrating them for life, and all you have to do is listen to Dr. Marcy Bowers on this, because she also says not only is it chemically castrating for life, majority, 99% of the time, but also once this child turns into an adult, they will never have a healthy, normal sex life, because they'll never be able to have fully functioning genitalia. That means that sex will never be pleasing for this adult. And how do you think they're going to feel knowing that they made that decision for themselves? And if they don't horrifically blame themselves, they'll blame the parents. Well, mom and dad, you should have known better. You should have protected me. What were you thinking? And the parents will say, well, I was listening to the doctors. And what the doctors were saying is that, we have to affirm you. But you also have to understand that the doctors have to affirm. these children, when they come in and say, I'm having these different gender feelings, I feel like a boy or I feel like a girl, they have to affirm them. Or else it's called conversion therapy and they would lose their license. So they have to affirm these children. And what a therapist does is a therapist is supposed to get down to brass tacks with the child. They're supposed to ask questions, probe a little bit, figure out, like, when did this happen? Let's talk about this. Let's get to the bottom of where these feelings came from. Did you talk to somebody, or is it just kind of come on, and how long has it been going on? They can't ask any of those questions. They can't probe deep within to find out what else is going on, because there's a lot more comorbidities that come along with this gender confusion. And if the therapist isn't allowed to probe, do you know what happens? They're not getting the mental health help. They transition, then they detransition. And those people are more likely to commit suicide. And did you also know that if a child transitions, she gets on the hormones, testosterone is very euphoric. It gives them euphoria, it makes them happy, less anxiety, but it only lasts for a certain amount of time. Years later, what happens? This suicidal ideation skyrocket. They are more likely to kill themselves 3 to 5 years after transition than if you would have just left them alone. There is not a consensus. I mean, there's so many reports that have come out. There's the CAST report, there's the WPATH files. These are whistleblowers who have said that these medical establishments are not in agreement. Doctors are not in agreement. They don't know what they're doing or what they're supposed to do. So many things. Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage. Helen Joyce's book, Trans. I can go on and on and on about there not being a consensus on this. There's tens of thousands of detransitioners out there. Don't you find that to be a problem? And the activists and the LGBTQ will say that, oh, it's a small portion of detransitioners. That's not true. There's a lot of them. And a lot of them, most of them, don't follow up with their doctors after they've transitioned when they're thinking about detransitioning, because the doctors either turn them away or tell them they can't help them. So when other detransitioners hear about that, they're like, well, why would I even go to my doctor and tell them that I'm detransitioning? So they are lost. And they're not counted. How many detransitioners aren't counted because they don't follow up, because they're not able to be helped? Or they get bullied by the same people who were praising them for transitioning. Why are there so many lawsuits now? From children who were minors that had their breasts cut off because they made a decision and their parents made a decision. Why are they suing those same doctors for malpractice? For doing harm. The doctor should have turned them away. See, back in the day, doctors used to turn people away. They used to be able to probe and ask questions. You used to have to go through 1 year to 2 years of therapy, and the doctor would then make a rational, unbiased decision if that person, adult, could go through with gender transition. But they had to be of age. Now everything is messy. Radical activists, they get their money. They keep their jobs because they keep pushing. Well, Big Pharma, they get a lot of money from all of this. The LGBTQ, money. I mean, after we got our rights to marry, where do you go from here, right? Well, they had to go somewhere. They had to push farther. And this is where they push to. That's their drive for this. It's a very selfish thing that people are doing by pushing and manipulating parents and children to transitioning. I have seen so many times where a parent will say, yeah, well, Johnny wanted to transition because he liked sparkles and pink. If that were the case, if I grew up today, I would have been transitioned. I would have been a very in pain, mentally destroyed, medically damaged, manipulated lesbian woman with a very deep voice. Because mind you, when women go on testosterone, it deepens their voice, and that does not go back. That does not change. Listen to some of the female detransitioners. It is irreversible damage. Now I'm a miserable adult. All because when I was a kid, I had to go pee a lot, and the boys were just able to go wherever, and I had to hold it, and that really, really pissed me off. And so I wanted a penis, just for that convenience only. But also I liked girls, and I didn't think that, there were no lesbians that I knew of when I was young. And I thought, well, the only way I'd be able to get a girlfriend is if I'm a guy. I liked boys' clothes. I liked action figures. I collected comics. I still do. I was in a ton of boy stuff. I loved sports, playing with bugs, all that stuff. They would have totally transitioned me if they would have gotten in my parents' years. And my parents were easily manipulated. And I would have been confused because I was just a child, brain not fully developed. I would have just went along with it because you listen to adults. You think that they know better. And if you're being told by adults, by people you look up to, that this will make you happy, if you're feeling different, you'll go for it and you'll really believe it. But come to find out, when you get older, you turn around and you realize that's not what I wanted. But how did I know? I was only a kid. The adults were supposed to protect me. How is a child supposed to protect themselves from the adults that are telling them that this is the right thing to do? This will make them happy. This will relieve their pain. So him saying this, because he has such a giant following, this is so dangerous to say. And I have to speak out. I know he's super popular, and I know that most of the time I liked him and agreed with him. But this is dangerous, and he needs to reel that back in. Reel that back in, bro. Close your mouth on that subject, because this is dangerous. You have no idea what you're messing with. Charlie, stop talking.
Okay, so a child can cut their penis off and take hormone blockers and change their biology forever, but they can't get married?
Well, that's a decision that now extends beyond the family, because now you're bringing in a different party. So if you have someone that's your age coming in saying, I want to marry that child, I don't think that can happen.
They're both arguing about minors and consent, which is kind of fucking weird, to be honest with you. But okay. So Sneako says that a girl can get married upon the age of maturity, and Charlie thinks that's stupid. But then Charlie's like, well, a child can mutilate their body and transition it, if they're a minor. It's fine as long as they get parental consent. So they both have the most ridiculous arguments, and we're listening to two of the most retarded arguments going back and forth. And these are two giant influencers. They have millions of followers. It's sick. This conversation is actually sickening.
Under any circumstance.
So, but it's still a personal decision. You're still deciding.
Because there's
take the other party out of the equation. It's a personal decision. If I'm 16 and I personally want to marry this girl, she's beautiful. She's 21 years old. Her family wants to do it. My family wants to do it. You're saying I can't do that. We're both consenting. I'm ready to go. I'm physically mature, but I'm not allowed to marry because Moist says that woman's a pedophile. But if then the next day I leave it, I'm depressed, I want to cut my penis off, I can go right into the clinic, snip it off, and start taking HRT like Chris Tyson. That's a society that makes sense to you?
It is. I believe everyone has I believe everyone has the right to do with their body what they want to do.
No matter their age. Both of these arguments are so disgusting. There hasn't been enough time and research done on the long-term effects of childhood transition. But what we do know is there are a lot of predatory doctors, therapists, and teachers that are not sending a healthy or good message to these children. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. I hope you did learn something, and like and subscribe to this channel. We'd like to get to 20,000 subscribers. That would be great. Comment below if you have any questions or concerns or experiences that you'd like to share. Join our membership for early access to our videos and prioritize commenting. Have a good one, everybody.